Hey, welcome back to the recipe list application. In this video, we're going to implement this edit button. So you can see that not only do we have a delete, but an edit. So if I want to change something, I click edit and I can add some more ingredients or change the name. Instead of fancy ice cubes, I'll just make them normal ice cubes. Save the changes. And I get a message here that says data was successfully inserted. Let's choose here to go back. Now, if I go and search for this recipe, let's search for all recipes, you will see that I have ice cubes now instead of fancy ice cubes. You'll also notice that some of the CSS has been upgraded on this version of the application, so we're eventually going to make their app look as good as this one. But the main feature that we're going to focus on now is the ability to edit and to change the contents of each recipe. So now I'm switching back into Eclipse. Let's look at the file called show admin page. And so this here has the button for delete on line 22 to 25. I'm going to use that as an example and copy it and paste below. Now instead of a delete button, I want this to be an edit button. The destination or the action should be to show a form. So let's say show edit form, and that should work. Now the input value here is the ID of each recipe. So the name of the input is ID, and the value of the input is the ID number from the recipe. Let's save this and let's go check it out and see what it looks like. So I'm going to switch back into my MAMP server and let's do a refresh. Let's do a click on the admin page, and now you can see that not only do we have a delete button, but each item has an edit button. If I click it, it tells me that I can't find the destination or the action. So that should be our next step. We need to create this file, and then we'll be able to change the recipes. The edit form is a lot like the add form. So I'm going to copy the information that's in the add form, and let's copy that, and let's make a new file and call it edit recipes. So a new file, and how about show edit form PHP, and paste. So this is supposed to be edit a recipe. And we're going to say process edit item instead of add item. Let's test it to see if this form is working. So I'm going to switch back and go to my admin page, click the edit button again, and this time I do get the edit recipe. So this is at least good progress. It looks like the add button needs to be renamed as well. So instead of add, let's say submit changes. Save that. Okay, so next is we have a problem of how to fill in the form, because right now editing gives us complete blank forms. We want to have those filled in for us. So in the next step, we have to go look up in the database the ID number. In this case, you can see I'm trying to get recipe number 9. If I get recipe number 9 and the 9 title and the ingredients and fill them into the form, then I don't have to type everything. It's all filled in for me. So let's go back into our show edit form, and we'll do some PHP to get those values. So let's create a section up near the top for PHP code. Now this form is expecting one value, the ID of the recipe. So we can say that the ID of the recipe equals the get value, and it was from the form, and its name was ID. Let's just check to see if we're doing the right one. So I'm going to say we plan to edit ID number 9. How about? Okay, that should work. Let's save it and test it out here. So now if I click on edit for recipe for ice cubes, that should be ID number 11. And it says we plan to edit ID 11. So good. We got the right ID number. It's coming from the get value up here. Now, we need to get the rest of the values. So for instance, we need to know the recipe title, the ingredients, and the instructions all from this ID number. And so let me just put out a little note here what we're planning on doing. We know the ID, and we want to get all the rest of the fields. Okay, so our goal is to look up the items in the database. So why don't you stop the video here if you think you can do this. We're going to make a connection to the database. We're going to find all of the recipes that match with this ID number, and then we want to grab the title, ingredients, and instructions for the row that has that match. Now, if you want to watch, I'm going to type it out here, but try it on your own first and see if you can remember what we've done in previous videos. Okay, so you're going to watch. I'm going to show you how to do it. First of all, we're talking to the database, so we're going to need the require once command. So the command that I've used in previous videos was this file called dbconnector. And now I'm going to make a connection with the database. So we're going to say if connection, and if that is true, then we have a connection. If it is not true, then there is not a connection. So we will echo an error. So I'm just going to check to see if this actually works. So I'm going to say connected and echo that. I'm going to try to edit pizza, and it says we plan to edit 10, and it says connected. So far, so good. Now that we've got a connection, we're trying to get some results from a SQL query. So let's write a query. So we want to grab all of the recipes that have the ID number of ID. So that looks like it'll grab the items we need. Now I only want to get one of these, so I'm going to say limit 1. Now there probably will never be more than one, but just in case, this will tell it to only receive one item. So this next statement will run the query and will give us some results. Okay, so I'm going to echo we got some results if we actually did. Otherwise, we will have an error, so then we'll say there was a problem. Okay, let's test this out and see what happens. Let's refresh the page. And it says here we got some results. So far so good. Now the next part is to take those results and save them in variables. So the while loop will go through every row, and we can assign the values to a new variable. Remember that inside the brackets of the row, we have to have the column name in the database. So if I were to look back on my database, I'm looking for these: recipe title, recipe ingredients, recipe instructions. Okay, so those should now be stored in variables. Let's echo them back to the screen just to make sure that they're working. So we've got all these echoes statements here. Now let's go back to our web browser and let's do a refresh on the page. And sure enough, it looks like we got the items we're expecting. So the next goal is not to just echo these items onto the screen, but we want to put them into these fields here, into these text areas. So let's switch back into Eclipse. We can take this variable recipe name and assign it to the value of the inputs down here. So down here in recipe title, we have the attributes of the input field. We have the type as text, its name is recipe title, but it doesn't have a value, so we can assign a value. And that value is going to be the variable called recipe name. So let's copy that. Now, that will not work. This is actually a variable from PHP. So all we have to do to make it work is to put the PHP brackets, the start and the end code, and I'm going to cut that, echo it, and paste. So now we should see the recipe name inside of this first input. Let's go and check it out. So I'm going to refresh the page and pizza shows up here. Good. Okay, so now we've got pizza in here. We're going to try to put ingredients in instructions in the text area. This is going to work a lot like the previous. We're going to use the PHP and NPHP tags and echo the information we need. However, a text area is slightly different than the input area. Text areas put the value of their contents between the opening and closing tag. So it goes like this. Echo, what is this? Recipe ingredients. And then the next one will be echo of the instructions. Okay, we'll save that and let's switch back. So we can see that we have these items now filled into our text areas and text fields. So since that is working, we can delete the items up above that say echo. So they're no longer required. Okay, so that kind of takes us to the end of filling out the edit field. Now the next part is we have to be able to submit the changes, and that doesn't seem to work yet. We have to have this file called process edit item, and let's do that in the next video.